The Last Year of Old Age. 5 Quiet Signs of Transition Buddhist Wisdom for Letting Go. When time begins to whisper, there comes a moment, not marked by a calendar, nor announced by thunder, when time begins to whisper instead of roar. You notice it in the slower pace of someone's steps, in the way laughter softens, fading into the quiet corners of the room, in the meals left untouched, the eyes that linger longer on the horizon, and you realize something is changing. We live much of our lives as if permanence were promised. We plan, we push, we assume tomorrow will come, just like today did. But the Buddha taught, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. Still, impermanence is not easy to embrace, especially when it appears in the ones we love. What if, instead of turning away, we turn toward it? What if this final chapter of life wasn't something to dread, but a sacred opportunity to be fully present? In today's reflection, we'll explore 5 quiet signs that may signal an elderly loved one is approaching their final year, not as omens of despair, but as invitations. Invitations to slow down, to soften, to show up not with fear, but with compassion. We'll look at these moments through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, not to fix or fight, but to understand, to honor, and most of all, to love without clinging. So stay with me. What you hear today may not only help you care for someone else, it may awaken a deeper presence within you. Let us begin. 1. The body's whisper when nourishment no longer calls. It often begins so quietly we barely notice. A belt that used to hug the waist now slides looser. A favorite dish left mostly untouched. A once hearty appetite suddenly gone. Families often explain it away. They're just tired. Maybe it's the medication. It's part of aging, isn't it? But the body speaks in whispers long before it stops speaking at all. And weight loss, unintentional, gradual, yet unmistakable, is one of its gentlest but clearest messages. It is beginning to let go. This isn't about vanity or appetite. It's about energy, how the body begins to reallocate it, conserving for what truly matters. Digestion slows. Hunger fades. The systems that once sustained vibrancy start stepping aside, making room for something deeper. The body's return to stillness. And yet, as caregivers, as children, as loved ones, we struggle. We urge them, just eat a little more. You need your strength. We battle nature, not out of ignorance, but out of love, fear, and grief disguised as hope. But Buddhist wisdom invites us to ask, what if acceptance is the deeper expression of love? The Buddha taught, what is subject to change brings suffering only when we cling. In other words, it is not the change itself that causes us pain. It is our resistance to it. When we see our loved one's body growing thinner, more fragile, we must not see defeat. We must see transition. Let me tell you a story. There was once an old monk named Tien, who had devoted his life to silence, to teaching, to walking barefoot on temple stones warmed by the sun. In his final year, his robes hung loose upon his frame. His students, heartbroken, begged him to eat. One young disciple offered him medicinal broth, whispering, "Master, this will restore you." Tien only smiled. Do you ask the leaves not to fall in autumn? Or the sun to stay a little longer in the sky? My body is returning, like the river flowing back to the sea. Let it be. The disciple understood. It was no longer about restoring life, but about honoring it, witnessing it, accompanying it with presence, not panic. So he sat beside his teacher. No spoon, no pleading, just tea shared in silence and the setting sun coloring the sky. This is the essence of loving presence. Not fixing, not prolonging, just being there. In Buddhist practice, this is metta, loving kindness. It may look like a soft blanket, a piece of mango, a warm sip of tea shared hand in hand. It's not the quantity that nourishes in these moments, but the quality of care, of tenderness, of undivided attention. When the body releases what it no longer needs, our role is not to pull it back, but to ask, how can I make this lighter for you? Can I let go of my fear so that you may find peace? Because true love, the kind that liberates instead of clings, is not measured by how hard we hold on, but by how gently we let go. And as we learn to let go, we begin to understand what remains: presence, connection, and a love that does not end with the body, but flows onward like the river into everything it touched. So the next time you see a loved one quietly pushing food around their plate, don't just ask, "Why aren't you eating?" Ask, "How can I sit beside you more gently today?" Because the body knows. It whispers. It prepares. And as the appetite fades, another sign may begin to emerge, just as subtle, just as sacred, a deep, unshakable fatigue. But this too is not failure. It's the body's way of saying, "I've carried you far. Now let me rest." Let's listen to what this weariness is trying to teach us. 2. The waning flame, when the light grows tired. There's a kind of tiredness that sleep cannot fix. It doesn't come after a long walk or a restless night. It arrives slowly, silently, like dusk slipping over the day. A weariness not of the muscles, but of the soul. This is the kind of fatigue we often see in the final stages of life. It's not failure. It's not defeat. It's the flame, once bright and generous, gently growing smaller after years of lighting the way. Imagine a candle that has burned faithfully through decades, warming rooms, guiding footsteps, comforting those nearby. When its light begins to flicker, it is not because it has failed, but because it has given so much. In Buddhist thought, energy is precious, finite, a sacred currency of life. As death nears, the body no longer spends it on movement, conversation, or tasks. Instead, it turns inward, toward peace, toward surrender. But for those who love deeply, this transformation can feel like loss. She used to bake every Sunday. He always walked to the mailbox, even in winter. And now, quiet, stillness, long hours of rest, short answers, a gaze that drifts elsewhere. We want to help. We say, "Let's take a walk. It will do you good." But sometimes, even love can come dressed as resistance. There's a story about an old woman named May. For 40 years, she tended her garden with devotion, her hands steady, her rhythm in tune with the soil. But in her final year, the weeds grew taller. The tools stayed hung. Her children urged her, "Come outside. Just for a bit." But May no longer needed to feel connected. She simply sat by the window, gazing at the garden she had once nurtured. "I still feel the flowers," she whispered. "I just don't need to pull the weeds anymore." This is the shift. From doing to being. From striving to simply witnessing. In Buddhist teachings, this is the wisdom of flow. Like a river that no longer fights the current, the body surrenders to its rhythm. And so must we. Let go of the need to keep things as they were. Let go of the idea that rest means giving up. How can I honor your pace today? Can I walk slower so you don't have to rush? Perhaps the most compassionate thing we can offer is not motivation, but permission. Permission to rest. Permission to fade gently. Permission to be loved exactly as they are, without expectation. A Zen monk once said, "The wind does not resist the tree's falling leaves. It carries them." In the same way, we are not meant to hold our loved ones in place. We are meant to carry them, softly, through these sacred final seasons. And if you find yourself beside someone who sleeps more than they speak, who no longer moves the way they used to, remember, the flame is still there. Smaller, quieter, but just as beautiful, just as worthy of reverence. And then, as physical strength quietly fades, a light still lingers in their eyes, silently watching a world they are slowly beginning to leave behind. From this stillness, another sign begins to appear, not in the body, but in the mind. Let us continue our journey into the next chapter. The mind's gentle departure, cognitive changes and withdrawal. 3. The mind's gentle departure, when the present begins to slip. At first, it might feel like a small forgetting, a misplaced name, a story repeated, a familiar room that suddenly feels unfamiliar. But slowly, imperceptibly, the mind begins to drift, not away in fear, but inward, as if seeking something beyond our reach. They may call you by another name. They may speak of someone long gone, as though they had just stepped outside. They may fall silent, their eyes fixed on something just beyond the horizon. And our hearts ache. We want to bring them back. No, Dad, you're not in the temple, you're home. Mom, that happened years ago, don't you remember? But here's the truth that Buddhist wisdom reveals to us. They are not lost. They are simply on a path we cannot yet walk. In Buddhist tradition, it is said that as death nears, consciousness begins to shift before the body does. The mind softens its grip on linear time. The boundaries between memory, dream, and spirit blur. This is not confusion. It is transition. Not something broken to fix, but something sacred to witness. There's a story of an old poet named Haru, whose verses once captured the delicate beauty of spring blossoms and autumn rain. In his final year, the words faded. The poems were forgotten. So were faces. Even his daughter, May, sometimes became a stranger in his gaze. At first, she tried to anchor him. "No, father, it's winter. There are no cherry blossoms." But one evening, as he stared out the window, he whispered, "Do you see them? The blossoms, they're everywhere." This time, May didn't correct him. She simply replied, "Yes, father. They're beautiful." In that moment, she let go of the need to bring him back, and chose instead to walk beside him, wherever he happened to be. This is the heart of mindful caregiving, meeting them where they are, not with facts, but with love, not with correction, but with presence. If they speak of the past, go there with them. If they fall silent, sit in the silence. If they forget your name, remind them of your love, not with words, but with touch, with patience, with presence. The Buddha taught, clinging leads to suffering, whether to people, to moments, or to the way things used to be. So when the mind begins to float between worlds, let us not pull it down. Let us become the soft shore they return to when they need stillness. Let our presence be the lantern that doesn't guide them back, but simply glows beside them. There is a quiet beauty in this stage of life, if we allow ourselves to see it. Like the final notes of a lullaby, like the flicker of a candle before it fades. We don't need to hold on to who they were. We can choose to love who they are, right here, right now. Even if the words are fewer, even if the silence is longer, And just as the mind begins to wander, the body too offers signs that it's releasing. Small wounds take longer to heal. Illnesses linger. But these are not signs of failure. They are part of the body's sacred return. Let us continue with the next unfolding. The body's surrender, frequent infections, and slow healing. For the body's surrender, when healing slows and nature speaks. It doesn't happen all at once. A small cut that lingers longer than it used to. A mild fever that comes and goes, and then stays. A bruise that blooms but never quite fades. To those watching, it feels like erosion. The strong hands that once built, cooked, embraced, now tremble. The body, once resilient, now opens itself to even the gentlest winds of illness. But what if this isn't failure? What if it is the body's way of preparing, of releasing, of returning? In Buddhist thought, everything is composed of the four elements: earth, water, fire, and air. And when life begins to close its circle, these elements return, one by one, back to nature. Earth begins to let go. Muscles weaken. Bones grow light. Water diminishes. Skin dries. Hydration fades. Fire cools. The warmth of the body slowly ebbs. Air, the breath, softens. Longer pauses, gentler sighs. Nothing is wrong. Everything is simply returning. We are not taught to see this. In modern life, we see slow healing and repeat infections as battles to be fought. We rush in with remedies, doctors, urgent questions. Why isn't this getting better? But perhaps the better question is, what is this moment asking of me, not to fix, but to honor? Let me tell you the story of Tenzin, a fisherman who spent his life rising before dawn, reading the waves like scripture, casting his nets into the breath of the sea. His body was strong, his skin weathered but sure. The ocean lived in his bones. And then the cold began to sting deeper. The wounds from the nets healed slower. The strength he trusted no longer answered. His family worried. They brought soup, herbs, warmth, remedies. His grandson, eyes full of love and fear, asked him, "Why doesn't your body fight harder, grandfather?" Tenzin, wrapped in a wool blanket, looked toward the sea and said, "Do you see the tide, child? It does not fight to stay on shore. It returns to the ocean, not in haste, not in fear, just as it always has." This is what surrender looks like, not despair, but rhythm. Not the end, but a return. In the final stages of life, the body becomes like a wave slowly pulling back from the shore. The immune system, once vigilant, begins to rest. And in that rest, we are offered a choice. Do we fight the tide? Or do we sit quietly beside it, offering warmth, not resistance? Your role is not to fix. It is to comfort, to keep their hands warm, their lips moistened, their rest undisturbed, to say without words, "You are safe. I am here." And yes, it will be hard. There will be an ache to do something, to seek just one more treatment, one more chance. But the deeper wisdom says, this moment is not ours to control. The tide will return when it is ready. Our greatest gift is not delay, it is dignity, not resistance, but reverence. And when the time comes, when the final ember dims and the breath grows still, may we see it not as loss, but as release. Like a leaf returning to the earth, like the moon slipping beneath the horizon, like a whisper returning to the wind. And just as the body prepares, the breath begins to change too. Slower, softer, with space between each inhale and exhale. This final sign does not come with noise or fear, but with silence, with grace, with the sound of life completing its circle. Let us now listen to the final rhythm. 5. The gentle breath when the wind begins to fade. There is a silence that arrives before the end. Not the silence of absence, but the silence of something holy. You may notice it in the breath, slower, softer, with long pauses. A gentle inhale, a stillness, then a delayed exhale, like the wind catching its breath before continuing. Hands and feet grow cool. The skin may pale, the pulse faint. And though every instinct may tell you to act, to intervene, to call for help, what the moment really asks is presence. In Buddhist teachings, breath is life's sacred thread. The first thing we do when entering the world is inhale. The last thing we do before leaving it is exhale. Everything in between is this miraculous rhythm. And when that rhythm begins to change, it's not the sound of something breaking, but the sound of something letting go. There was a woman named Hannah, known in her village for her quiet strength. She didn't speak much, but when she did, people listened. She often said, "The wind and the breath are the same. You do not own them, you do not control them. You only receive them." In her final days, her granddaughters sat by her side, watching as Hannah's breath grew lighter, more delicate. "Grandmother," she whispered, "should I do something?" With barely a smile, Hannah replied, "No, child. Just sit with me. Breathe with me." So she did. Not with panic, not with urgency, just quiet, shared breath, two rhythms slowly becoming one. This is the heart of presence. Not fixing, not saving, but witnessing, being. When we try to hold on, to stir them from stillness, we interrupt the sacredness of the process. But when we sit, hand in hand, breathing with them, not as saviors, but as companions, we honor their final act not with fear, but with love. The Buddha once said, "Just as a flame returns to space, so too does life return to its source." So when you see the breath soften, when the pauses stretch longer, do not fear. Do not fill the room with noise. Instead, become the stillness. Hold their hand. Speak softly. Let your presence say what words no longer can. You are safe. You are loved. You may let go. And when that final breath comes, when the space between inhales becomes a gentle forever, know that it is not the end. It is a return, like the wave dissolving into the sea, like the wind fading into the sky, like the soul becoming everything it ever touched. Now, there is only one thing left to speak of, not death, but what remains when everything else has gone. Let us close with the final reflection. The final gift, presence, love, and letting go. In the end, what truly matters is not how long a life was lived, but how deeply we showed up for it. Not how many breaths were taken, but how many moments we were fully awake to each one. When someone we love is nearing the end of their journey, our greatest offering is not control, not more time, not desperate fixes. It is presence, the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't need to fill the silence, the kind that understands love doesn't always speak, it simply stays. Sit beside them even when words no longer come. Listen, not just with your ears, but with your entire heart, to their stories, to their silences, to the sacred space in between. In Buddhist wisdom, we learn this powerful truth. It is attachment that brings suffering, not love. True love is the art of allowing. Letting go doesn't mean we stop loving. It means we love so fully, we allow them to leave in peace. Just as the autumn leaf falls without regret, just as the river flows freely to the ocean, just as the moon disappears from the sky, yet never truly leaves it. So when the time comes, when the final breath is drawn and the room falls still, may we not be overcome by sorrow alone. Let us remember, this was never a goodbye. It was a transformation. They are not gone. They have only changed form. Now they live in the quietest parts of your heart, in your gestures of kindness, in your moments of stillness, in the breath you take when you pause to feel that they are still here. So take that breath, feel their love inside it, and carry it forward, gently, bravely, endlessly. If this message has touched you, if it brought even a moment of comfort or clarity, I invite you to stay on this path with us. Here, we explore life's deepest truths through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, finding peace in impermanence, strength in stillness, and meaning in every passing moment. Let us continue walking this journey together, mindfully, lovingly, always with presence. If this message resonated with something deep within you, if it reminded you of someone you love, or helped you see impermanence with a little more peace, I invite you to share your heart. Leave a comment. Tell us who you're thinking of, what moment this brought back, what it helped you release. And if you feel called to keep walking this path with us, to explore life, death, and everything in between, through the lens of Buddhist wisdom, please consider subscribing. This is more than a channel. It's a quiet space in a noisy world, a place to breathe, to remember, to return. We don't rush here. We reflect, and we walk together, one mindful step at a time. So if your heart feels a little lighter after this video, stay with us. There's more to explore, more to feel, and so much more to love.